Hi, this is Jennie Walker and welcome to Closet Conversations. Today I want to talk to you about preparing your items for sale. Now, that's going to include a number of things such as getting them on the appropriate hangers, ensuring that they're clean, wrinkle-free, tags aren't hanging off, etc. And one of the things that I have found kind of curious, but as I think about it, kind of makes sense is when people bring items in and they even though we ask for them to be on hangers, they very well might be wadded up in a plastic bag. Even though we've asked for them to be dry cleaned, they very well may not be. And so I find myself always in a state of happy surprise and delight when items have been freshly dry cleaned, or they were cleaned and then stored away, and then they've brought those items in. Even they weren't cleaned yesterday, but they have been cleaned. They've been hanging around and just unused in the closet, and they bring them in. But the reality is, people are not going to want to invest any more money in clothes that they're ready to get rid of. And so when you're talking about dry cleaning clothes, it could be $20, $30, $40, $50, $100. It could be a lot more depending on how many items that they're bringing in that need to be treated. So what we do is we've gotten to the point where we evaluate each item. In our contract, it says that if they require dry cleaning, that we will dry clean them and deduct that fee from the price of their item, and that is in writing. But what's kind of interesting about it is that if someone brings in something and a bunch of it needs to be cleaned, and if it's something that I'd be interested in and it needs to be cleaned, I kind of divide it in two piles. Okay, here are the things I'm not interested in because they are not clean. The kinds of cleaning that we all know and love. I mean, for women, it's going to be insides of jacket and the armpit linings. It's going to be, different areas of the garments where that are going to show more signs of wear. So I find myself having to, get a microscope out and look in every fold and curve of an item to see what's going on in there. And I've had a couple of doozies, surprises, and which is kind of fascinating because, it's supposed to be clean. So the whole point is, here's what I've learned. If I tell someone, okay, these items I'm not taking, and here's why. Sometimes I will tell them because this is stained, or it's dirty, or there's a rip, or there's a snag, or there's whatever. But sometimes it's all of those things, and it's not a style I would take, and so it's just sort of like, okay, here are all the reasons I'm not taking this pile of clothes. But this other pile is going to be the things that I'm really, really sad are not clean. And if they can be cleaned, would be something that I would want to try to sell in the store. Now, at first, we used to just clean everything that needed cleaning. I mean, we would, I'm not talking about tons of stuff or hundreds of items necessarily, although we had one estate batch come in where we literally had hundreds of items cleaned and had to get a special price for that. And, of course, it was deducted out of their account, but it was totally worth it. We were talking about vintage Missoni wool pieces, and when you do with an estate, you don't know what's going on in those clothes. I mean, you don't know how long they've been in there, if there's critters, as I like to say, which the reality is it's silverfish. This is what you have to deal with estates. And so we have had a situation where a whole bunch of stuff had to be cleaned. It came from an estate, and we had to negotiate a special price with the dry cleaner to get it done, a flat fee for a whole bunch of items. I think like 80 items had to be cleaned. So that did happen. So after I did that, I'm like, okay, it's no big deal to dry clean something for someone and deduct it. But it got to the point where it's overwhelming amount of dry cleaning going on. And then when I had the situation where $46 had been spent to try to dry clean two two-piece suits, or one was two-piece, one was three-piece, and they failed to get the issue out. Like, it was damage inside the lining from sweat, and it hadn't bled through or anything to the other side of the jacket. So there was hope that something could be done, but it's almost $50. They were not successful. And at that point, I'm like, okay, not only did I spend $50 to be reimbursed for, the client spent $50. And that's a lot of money to spend on something that is not going to be able to be sold. And so at that point, I was like, okay, why don't I push it back on to the consignor? Here are the pieces that I will take. If you get them cleaned, you can bring it back to me and we'll take it in. So I started that, and then they'd never come back. And so I'm like, okay, this is too much work. If I send them away with these beautiful pieces, they're probably not coming back. And so I'm like, okay, let me try to take it in again. But then it was like, okay, now I'm back to that place I was again. So now I'm to the point where I'm like, okay, I had something come in recently, and things need to be cleaned. And so the woman says, okay, I will clean them and bring them back to you. And so she did clean them, and she did bring them back, which was fantastic, because I never know if it's coming back in the door. But another situation where it was a different estate, where a number of things had to be cleaned that were just beautiful things. I mean, Jean-Paul Gaultier and, Emmanuel Ungaro, and things that I felt like if the problems could be solved, there would be beautiful pieces to have in the store. But there were so many pieces. I basically negotiated with the owner, and I said, look, I mean, either you can get an estimate, I can get an estimate, we can both get an estimate. I said, but it has to be cleaned or I cannot take it in, period. And I showed every stain, every problem to this person so they could see what I was talking about. And, there's no arguing when you look at something that needs to be cleaned that indeed it does. And so this was a situation where the owner was going to get a bid from her cleaner, and she's going to bring it back in. And she has already called me, so I know that has happened. And she'll bring them in, and then depending on what her bid is, I will see if I can get something better. So, got to be clean. And, it's kind of interesting that, you can tell yourself, I'm not going to look at anything that doesn't come in on a hanger. I don't do that, of course, but I mean, there are people who refuse to look at things that are wadded up in garbage bags, because the thinking is if they've treated the items that poorly, they couldn't be any good. But I have been pleasantly surprised by what I have found in garbage bags. Not as in I found garbage, but they were brought in that way. Or they bring them in suitcases and all kinds of things. So I have found some of the most beautiful designer things I have ever seen come in a way that you just wouldn't, subscribe to have them be presented as. So you're talking about dry cleaning, you're talking about steaming. So we do a lot of steaming in there. We actually pay to have buttons sewn back on. We pay to have hang tags that are hanging off sewn back. So we actually invest time and energy to make sure that garment is in as good a shape as possible. If it needs depilling, if there's a few, pill balls under the arms or something, we'll make sure that that's been removed. But yeah, I mean, these are all things that have to be done in order to present the item in its best light. And certainly for putting things up on eBay, you absolutely have to have the wrinkles out. Now, there are sometimes my partner gets restless, and he's like putting it up on eBay, and I have not had a chance to steam it. And so I can tell you there are a couple of pictures in there that I would not vote for. But for the most part, the process is they come in, I hang them up, I get them steamed, I get everything prepared, I get them tagged, and then they're in a special section that he works with where they go up on eBay. For me, there's something really special about bringing something back to life, and this goes back to my real love of clothes, and it's kind of wonderful to have something that, let's say, does need to be steamed out or does need to have a tag sewn back on, or a button that's, come off in your hand because the thread has rotted or something. And, it's kind of really cool to be able to bring it back to life and bring it back to its former glory as it gets ready for its next, life. And it's really cool because there's some really wonderful things out there. And, we don't stick to a really strict policy of, it must be in the last 5 years or in the last 10 years, because my attitude is you just can't do that because there are beautiful pieces from every decade. And so we are kind of loose with that. And I basically say it's got to be a high brand, or it has to be interesting. And when it's in the interesting column, it doesn't have to be a brand that people are searching for, like a Gucci. And it just has to be really, really special. And we do get things on the red carpet. We work with stylists, and so they're always looking for things that are different and unique. And these kinds of stores are exactly where you can find them. You're not going to see yourself coming and going when you get a really special, unique piece from a luxury consignment shop like ours. Now, something I haven't done is spent any time repairing shoes. I mean, that is just something that I really draw the line on, because when you're dealing with shoes, and we get so many that are brand new in the box, if I never ever took in a shoe that wasn't brand new in a box, I'd still have plenty of shoes coming through that door. We had a woman bring us about 25 pair of shoes, and 23 of them were brand new in the box, all Ferragamos. And, there are different reasons, again, why people bring things, but nonetheless, they were all brand new in the box. One person, 23 shoes, 23 pair of shoes, brand new, never worn. And so for me, shoes are really tricky. I mean, people have different size and shaped feet. Nobody wants a toe print in a shoe for any reason, especially because people's toes are different, right? You've got the one where the second toe is longer than the first, and other people where it's, evenly goes in decreasing size order. Which I'm thinking about myself and my sister. We have completely different feet. Mine is second toe larger, and hers is, they decrease in exact order. And, we still don't know why that is, but we're very different in that way. But nobody wants a toe print in a shoe. I mean, come on. So, and sometimes shoes have been, the friction on the inside of the insole that could potentially have rubbed the color off or the brand name off. And, we're just like, we're trying to have a luxury experience. So when you think about that as your framework, then that's going to help you make decisions on what clothes you take in by saying, okay, not taking this in. One, it's just too worn. It's just too damaged. And I have turned away a lot of name brand shoes, Chanel shoes, Christian Louboutin shoes. I've turned them away, and I've said basically, beautiful shoes, too much wear. Someone can probably sell them, but I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that. So, we just took in 2 pair of Valentino patent leather pumps. If she wore them twice, that would be saying a lot. And, one has a box, one doesn't. The whole inside of the shoe is completely clean, and there's wear on the soles. And so I'm like, okay, they're gorgeous, they're Valentino, and even though they're not brand new or worn once, they're worn like twice, I can still take them in and get a good price for those. So that's a little something to think about, is the condition and how to prepare the clothes, putting them on the right kinds of hangers, whether you have foamed hangers or not foamed so things aren't falling off, clip hangers for pants, how you decide to display those in the store, whether you, have a pant hanging front ways or sideways. I mean, these are all different things to decide about, but things do need to be clean. They do need to be steamed and pressed, and they need to be in good repair with hang tags not coming off and buttons not falling off. And we just have a policy to ensure that we make that part of our process. So yeah, just a little something to think about. I think it makes a difference to customers. I know they appreciate that. And we get so many questions in our store, like they go, what kind of store is this? Are these things new? Is this a boutique? Like, they're really confused because we do have so many things that are new with tags. We have so many things that we have ensured they're in as good a shape as possible. So people are confused because in a lot of stores you do have the hang tags coming off. You do have buttons off. I mean, even the Real, my favorite example, it'll say in their listing, hang tag off, pilled, stained. And, they're telling you, anytime it says moderate, you better run screaming, because I have bought things from that place that said moderate. And moderate basically says It's bad, but not so bad we're going to mail it back to the customer. It's bad enough, but we still think we can sell it because it's highly branded or highly styled. So when I see something that says moderate anything, I run screaming, and I won't even consider it anymore because I've seen what their moderate looks like. And it basically are things that they have not taken the time to repair or fix, which tells you that the volume is enormous and they don't make time for that. That's not a priority for them. So they're just like, okay, tell them the hang tag's coming off. Tell them it's got a spot on it, or tell them it's got whatever. And there was actually this jacket that I looked at for ages because I have something that matches it. And it had this, I kept asking myself, why did I not buy this thing? Because it's on like my watch list. And then I was reading the description one day and it said, there's a big spot on the back. And so when I looked at the photo, sure enough, it's basically a spot that the dry cleaner can get out. And so they're selling something that in theory they could have put in good order. They could have put it through a dry cleaning process or gotten a tag sewn back on, but that's not what they're going to do. They're not going to take the time to do that. And so you have to really read those descriptions very closely. And I think in boutiques with a traditional consignment shop, and by no means do I think a traditional consignment shop is competing with the Real, a gigantic e-commerce company. I mean, this is like apples and oranges. But we are in the same industry doing similar things, and I think where a boutique can make the time to ensure their things are beautifully hung, they're cleaned, they're steamed, the tags are sewn on, the buttons are on. I think that's going to go a long way in helping you have a really great reputation for the things that are in your store. And that's it. And this is Jennie Walker with Closet Conversations. I appreciate you listening to this podcast. If you like what you've heard, please give it 5 stars and a review and a thumbs up or whatever else you could do on this podcast. And those will help me because I'm building this podcast series up from scratch. And so it's going to take some time to get the word out. So I appreciate you listening and sharing the links with people that you know. Again, this is Jennie Walker, owner of Jenniegirl's Closet, a resale and styling company, and co-owner of a luxury consignment shop, Walker Viden Luxury Consignment in Pasadena, California. Thank you for listening.